Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Hi, friends. Thank you for being here. I hope this finds you in good health and secure. Thank you for your support. Like, subscribe. Takes a few seconds, and it's propagation. It's a bodhisattva act. It helps us grow the Sangha and spread the teachings, yeah? I've talked on this many times, but again, the purpose of this series is to go over what's inside the Buddhism reference book that I've recently published, yeah? So, this is at the back in the appendix, and there's a section I put in here because I get asked about this a lot. You know, we read on our own, we do our own study, and you study. In fact, I just ordered it's an aside, but it's related. I just ordered another translation of the Lotus Sutra. I've had the PDF of it, and I reviewed it, so it's not new to me. But I was thinking that because this is from the BDK, it's yet another source of academic scholarship, I guess you would say, of propagation of the translations of the Lotus Sutra. And I'm always fascinated by how different sources, different cultures, even though they're all using Kumarajiva's translations from Indian or Sanskrit to various languages, Chinese mostly, and then into either Japanese or into English or French or, world languages. The point of view of the authors, because there's usually more than one, and the process of publishing, there's a publisher and their editor staff, and they all have their own charisma and biases they bring to the fore, right? So the book ends up being a translation not just of the author, but of a compendium of opinions on, this is where I think a lot of this happens, although I don't know this, the various components of every translations, but you can imagine that the bias of a culture, the things you grow up with, the kinds of terminology you grow up with. In some countries, it's Jewish, or it's Islam, it's some form of Muslim religions, or it's Christian. A lot of that, right? That's all over the place. They really propagated that stuff, and it shows up not just in conversation amongst people who are religious. See, that's the thing, is even if you're completely uninitiated or unreligious, if you will, participating actively in religions, the television you watch, the radio you hear, the lyrics in the songs, right? Knock, knock, knocking on heaven's door, or right, going to the spirit in this guy. I mean, it's in everything, right? I'm sure it's in rap, and it's in independent music of all sorts. It's the rhetoric we grow up with. It's in, like I said, television commercials, radio, lyrics. It's in the books we read. And of course, it's in the conversations. And we just adopt words without really considering their depth of meaning. And, in vernacular and conversations may not be that big of a deal. But when you're writing academically, when you're writing a scholarly transcription of a teaching or a subject or science or medicine, those transgressions of language are very meaningful, and they can be very misleading because words have charisma, right? And I talk about it all the time. The Lankavatara Sutra is an entire sutra by Shakyamuni pointing this problem out. So don't just take my word for it, right? So in that vein, I've made a section at the back of this book of non-Buddhist words that I think we should avoid, because whether we think of it or not, they inculcate, they kind of force into the rhetoric of Buddhism wrong thinking. anti-Buddhist thinking in many cases. Yeah. So I have a list of a few words, and I have a little story about it here. So, this BDK translation of the Lotus Sutra, it's part of their propagation of the Tripitaka, and so it's going to have a certain point of view to it. And I don't want to talk about this any longer, except to mention, and because I'd like your opinion. I did a read-through of the Kosekai Threefold Lotus Sutra in the Lotus Lectures playlist. There's like 49 videos where I go through every single chapter, right? And go through it. And then I also used, while I was doing Lotus Lectures, I used an H. Kern translations from 1884, and I used a modern Gene Reeves translations of the Lotus Sutra, and I even used old Tendai quotations and from the Lotus Sutra. I used several different translations. I may have even used some from this BDK. At any rate, I'm ordering the book because I like print books, so that I can have something to mark up and so forth as a lesson plan. And what do you think? Should I do another Lotus Lectures and just go page by page, chapter by chapter through this BDK translation and see if we can identify some curious ways of translations or thoughts? The truth of the Dharma, the teachings of Shakyamuni, they will come through. They will. They just do. But it can be fascinating, and it may be useful as a teaching tool to hear slightly different perspectives, because it may touch off an insight for you. Because we all think differently, right? So what do you think? Should I do another Lotus Lectures with a different, and stick to the BDK script? Maybe reference something older like H. Kern every now and again, just as a comparative. I'm not sure yet. Let me know what you think. I've done a lot of other sutras and a lot of other teachings and talked about a lot of other things on this channel, but it is predominantly a Nichiren doctrine of Shakyamuni's Lotus Sutra. We practice Lotus Sutra Buddhism, yeah. So I'm not averse to doing another one. I just don't want to bore anybody, right? And it's been a few years since I've done the Lotus Lectures, so maybe I'll have a nuanced take on it that I didn't have before. Anyway, please let me know in the comments. Non-Buddhist words to avoid. That's what we're talking about today. In the history of Buddhist translations, the biases of local cultures and traditions have crept into the vernacular of the text. This is a problem that can cause confusion with sometimes disastrous effects. Whether intentional or unintentional, the use of religious terms, either developed for or used to validate magical thinking in the ideology and vernacular of religions based on powers and entities of control outside the mind of individuals, is a contrivance used by religions to thwart the idea that we are in control of our own lives and or minds. That's a long sentence, but you get the gist of it, right? I mean, this is the formula of religion. Let's create a thought in the mind that is illogical, irreasonable, non-reasonable, and can't be proven, obviously. It's fantasy. But the tricky thing is it can't be disproved either. So we can use it as a manipulative tool to get people off their idea that they have any say or control in their lives. Right? Their lives are not in their control or even of their own merit. That their lives are owed to some other force, some outside entity. Every religion works this way. And that allows a crack in the door where the salesman, the preacher, the teacher, the whatever, can come in and tell you what you need to do in order to appease whatever that power is. I mean, it's really, really disgusting. It's like con 101. You know, some cons learn how to pickpocket. Some cons learn, or they call it, what do they call it? Enough television, I should know the vernacular. The long con, right? It's scams, we call them today. They happen on the phone, in emails, in texts all the time, you know. Oh, please, good friend, I live in some foreign country, and I work at a bank, and I have the unfortunate task of distributing this money, and I need an ally. Could you be right? The scam starts, giving you perceived power that you don't have, right? We're so craven to have this identity that we want to hold up that we'll fall for this con constantly. This is how religion started, right? We needed to know it wasn't our fault. And we needed to know that we could do something about it, but there were also a lot of instances where it was a relief to be told, it's not your fault. Don't worry about it. Just ask this cloud over here to help you, and that'll change things. I don't know. It's the more you take it apart, the more unreasonable it is. But to those who've drank the Kool-Aid, they're not reasonable people. They're irrational, right? So you can't argue with that. So Buddhism is a very self-motivated practice, right? For this very reason. Because you own all the cards. You own the script. That's extremely powerful if you think about it. Just for a moment, think about that. I mean, we're very well trained in our societies to look for things that aren't our fault. But it's not about fault. It's about how things come to be. And if they come to be in your life, it's your life. You know, it's like you own a boat and it springs a leak. Do you cry that something has created a leak in your boat? Or do you get about fixing it so you don't frickin' sink? Right? This is common, rational, reasonable thinking. That's what Buddhism is. So, whether it's intentional or unintentional, like I was saying in the translations, people may unconsciously be using rhetoric because it's the only way they think they can understand what they're reading of these ancient texts. And even the translations they're using to translate may be at fault. But as Shakyamuni warned in his own teachings, and he thought, his teaching should be taught in whatever regional language was acceptable to the people, so you might make that argument. But my counter argument would be that I'm sure what he meant by that was that you would be true to the teaching, the meaning of the teaching, and not develop a romance with the poetry and rhetoric and the words. The Lankavatara is all about this, so if you're not clear about that, I recommend that as good reading. So let's go on with what it says in the book here. This is a handy device for manipulation and control of others, is it not? This is why I often refer to religion as a method of social governance and control of a populace. Really? It's more about governance. It's a set of impositions, rules, threats, surveillance, right? It's not an actual palpable thing, unless you get smacked by the law. Nothing could be more opposite from the teachings of Shakyamuni Buddha. Shakyamuni Buddha's teachings are about you and the way you govern your life experience, right? And how your life experience touches others. There's lots of cautions about how others can influence you and the way that you run your life. But that's not a governance of the society. That's still a governance of you, right? In Buddhist teachings of Shakyamuni's lifetime, the entire focus is on one's ownership of control, responsibility, and actions dedicated to one's maximal potential. Buddha. Yeah. What follows is a list of commonly seen words in translations of Buddhist literature that are aberrant and intolerable substitutes that mislead and diverge from Buddhist thought and intent. And when I wrote that, I thought, well, then the exegesis is on me, since I'm pointing that out, to maybe suggest a substitute. Instead of this word that appears everywhere, what could we substitute for it and have it read more authentically as Buddhist thought, instead of towards some stigma of religion? Yeah. The first one I have to call out, it's all over the place, is the word faith. Oh my goodness. That is not a Buddhist word. It's so not a Buddhist word. Okay, 2 bullet points. When you look it up online, you'll see 1, confidence or trust in a person or thing. Ooh. Did you hear that? What's samsara? What is it, the core of what Buddhism is about, right? Liberating yourself from samsara so that you can think clearly. Buddha-ness. Right off the bat, what's faith? Oh, it's confidence or trust in a thing. An object. Right? Why do you think so many people think they're praying to a piece of paper? Ha! What? It has nothing to do with Buddhism. That is the danger of words like this. Faith in another's ability. No. That's when you hear other, that means not you. Buddhism is about you. So, okay, second bullet point. Belief, that word, that is not based on proof. Everything in Buddhism is based on proof. Proof by experience, by actual experience, reality. Belief that is not based on proof. Well, right then and there, stop. He had faith that the hypothesis would be substantiated by fact. And a Buddhist would say, well, until it's substantiated by fact, it ain't nothing. It's worthless. A scientist would say that too. That's why I make more of a corollary between Buddhism and science, with its logical, rational, reasonable methodology, its rigor of proof. Faith is the exact opposite. Not a Buddhist word. How can one claim to understand karma, or Buddhahood, or the 10 worlds or realms, etc., and not see the crazy contradiction in the use of this word? Faith is a word of surrender, a word of expectation with no basis in fact or reason, raw, unfettered desire. The exact thing we want to shut down our attachment to in Buddhism. So why is this frickin' word everywhere in translations? It's extremely damaging. Now, as a substitute, I offer resolve, or a strong mind of determination. As Nichiren says, Nichiren doesn't use this word, although people put it in his mouth. When you quote Nichiren, these very same people quote him as saying, single-minded when you want to see Buddha, right? You don't ask for him to come over with some cookies and milk. It's your mind. Are all more in keeping with the teachings of Shakyamuni. I don't know how many times I'm going to talk about this to put it to rest, but I hope that this short entry, and maybe in combination with the others, you will start to see how you need to train your thinking to hear alarm bells and see red flags whenever you see these words, and reread what you're reading with the word resolve or strong mind, and you'll see a huge difference in the meaning of the sentence. Here's another one that causes the same degree of ignorance and worship. We do not worship. I have videos about this. Several, in fact. Put that in these, go to the home page of this channel. And in the middle of the page, next to where it says playlists and about, you may have to scroll that over. They kind of hid it. There'll be a little magnifying glass with a line next to it. That's the search inside this channel, not all of YouTube. And in that search, put in the word worship and see several videos pop up from the hundreds and hundreds on this channel on this subject, if you're interested. For the purposes in this book, I have 2 bullet points. Again, off of the general knowledge base of Google, yeah? 1, reverent honor and homage paid to God or a sacred personage or to any object regarded as sacred. Here's the problem with mandala and gohonzon appearing again. I actually heard an NSA/SGI person at a meeting, a leader, refer to that scroll as what we Buddhists worship. I almost vomited. I had to correct him. I couldn't believe that somebody who'd been practicing for years was actually saying that. And it's because these words are so damaging to the proper understanding of Shakyamuni's teachings. We don't worship. We manifest. Buddhists manifest. How do we manifest? We manifest from a capability we innately have. It's like learning to walk, learning to run, feeding ourselves. These are skills we innately have, and we develop them so that we can realize or manifest them, those skills. That is Gohonzon mind. That is Buddha-ness. That is innate. How many times have we read that? Where in that formula does this idiot word worship creep in? It has nothing to do with Buddhism. But depending on the sect, some sects like Nichiren Shu has Christianity all over it. I just had a Japanese Nichiren Shu write me a communication and said, when this and Buddha, parentheses, God, does da. And I thought, did you really just write that? So I'm not just talking about Americans or Canadians or whatever. This is international. This is a travesty. And it's not Buddhism. So every time I see that mistake, I'm reminded of Shakyamuni's words, that we live in the age of the potential loss of the teachings. This is how. This is how we lose the true teachings of the Dharma. The insipid, infection of religious terminology. Friends, we do not worship, we manifest. We develop and train our minds to examine and develop our skills of perception. It's you, it's me. It's not some mythical spaghetti dragon orbiting the solar system. It's in the very description. Reverent honor and homage paid to God. Who wrote that? All right, second bullet point. Yes, I'm animated. Just as Nichiren was animated. Have you heard some of the, or read some of the vitriol that Nichiren had for his compatriots spreading erroneous baloney? Well, number 2, formal or ceremonious rendering of such honor and homage. They attended worship this morning. We don't ever need to use that word, ever. No, 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 I wrote. Buddhists do not worship. Buddhists manifest. When we chant, we manifest our Buddha mind. When we sit or kneel at our Butsudan and focus our attention on Nichiren's mandala, we are invoking our Gohonzon mind and our manifestation of Buddha-ness. This is a practice of self-enlightenment. Self-enlightenment, not a plea to be rescued. This is also the precise reason that the confusion of the Nichiren mandala and the Gohonzon, when the Gohonzon is taken to identify the physical mandala, that it is such an egregious error. The Gohonzon is not some holy relic to be worshipped. It is a mental experience to be manifest for enlightenment. Please see Gohonzon in this book. A substitute, okay, depending upon the many uses of this word in context, options include manifest or commit or resolve again, determination, engage, and discipline. These are all words that are self-reflective, not a plea for something, some rescue from something outside of us. That's complete hogwash. Our mind, our Gohonzon mind, controls our experience of life. Nothing else. Right? That's why we list 8 consciousnesses. Buddhism has taken this apart in so many ways, in so many minute examples, from early Nidana to the 9 consciousnesses to the 3,000 realms. I mean, how many ways could Shakyamuni take this apart to help us identify the process in our mind without any need, not a denial, just no need of some mythical, magical other? Do you still believe in Santa Claus? Because every kid, by the time certainly by the time they're 10 years old, understand that that's some funky little story, that there is no fat man coming down that tiny little chimney, that's just ridiculous. That's the way every religion should go. It should just die out because it's silly, silly, silly. All right. Following this line of rhetoric, where are we? Well, just at 30 minutes. How many more words do I have here? Oh, gosh, there's some pretty big ones, too. I think maybe I'll take a break. The next word is prayer. See how all these are going together? You can recognize where they're coming from, right? It's not a Buddhist word. Never a once was Namo Myoho Renge Kyo considered a prayer? See, that was shoehorned into Buddhism, and by very unscrupulous people. If they weren't aware, as claiming academic scholarship, that that word shouldn't be in Buddhism, then I question their scholarship directly. And I'll take any of them on. Seriously, this is insulting. So, you might get the idea that I feel strongly about this. Hey, but why wouldn't I? I'm concerned about the Lotus Sutra, about Nichiren's insights, about practicing the Dharma correctly. This is intolerable. I went through years of editing the entire corpus of Gosho that I could find, just to edit out these pollutions and make the Goshos sound more true to Nichiren's voice, to the voice of Shakyamuni through the Lotus Sutra. And I pained over it because I didn't want to just ad hoc change words for my preference, right? I wanted it to be true to Nichiren's voice. So it took years. And I still could go back and do more editing. I know I could. But I'm exhausted. I don't have any help. It's just me. So I have 6 volumes available on Lulu. I think I even have them as ebooks. I'm pretty sure I do. Book 1, book 2, book 3, book 4, book 5, book 6. A collection of all of the Zenshu. There's more I could add to it if I go into the... I honestly, the translations that Nichiren Shu has to their propagation organization, it's even worse. So unless I can find a Gosho in there that doesn't exist in the Zenshu, I'm not very motivated to do any more. But I would highly recommend, and you'll see that whatever copies of the Gosho you have from other organizations, plus I do my books in 12-point Bookman old style print, so people like me can read the damn thing, because they print this stuff, most people, on text for ants to read, and I don't mean aunts and uncles, I mean 6-legged ants. Okay. The text is so small and the paper's so thin you can see through it. I can't read that. That's why I did the Lotus Lecture video series, right? I figure if you can't read it, maybe I can talk through it. But the Gosho, I've also done, Nichiren Gosho playlist. That's over 300 videos, because if it's all the Gosho, and I read them. So you can have them as videos or podcasts for free. But if you want a copy of what I was talking about, you can get a print copy or an ebook copy and compare for yourself. All right. I'm going to let you go. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your practice. Take care of your health. That's very important, if only to keep your practice strong, yeah? Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Patrons, people who buy books, liking and subscribing. These are all Bodhisattva activities that keep this channel and resource growing. So with all of my gratitude, I will see you in the next one, okay? Bye for now.
Baby, you give me ice and fire. You're giving me wind and rain. You're some kind of butterfly. Baby, you give me midnight. You whip up my appetite. Don't leave me here high and dry.